pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I get a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda. There will not be an executive session in item C, so would that change? Can I get a motion? Mrs. Wood, second by Mrs. Fishman. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. All right, there are no blue cards, so we'll dispense with the community open forum. Move right into item D, which is personnel. Can I get a motion to accept item D in its entirety? Mrs. Wood, second by Mrs. Fishman. Any discussion on D? I do have one, and I apologize because I meant to mention this to you earlier, Tom. It's not a big deal. It's 1 or anything. I think it's in 2, but so I know we're just acknowledging the providers, like we're not approving because it has to be approved, but what's the reason that we're approving something that started almost, one of them was like 2 months ago now? Where are they? Yeah, I think it was under D3. Yeah, I think so.
Shared manager.
No, I think it's gonna be under.
Like I have.
Are you looking for where you're acknowledging the service providers like Captain Kemp and Marcia Burrell, the service providers through City of Oswego and Children's Therapy Network?
I'm thinking so, yes.
And that must
Is that under 1, 2, or 3?
It's under one, instructional personnel.
Oh, no. I can't read those dates.
keep scrolling, that's right here. So,
Yeah, I can read that.
Yeah, perfect, yeah. So like on one, it's September 5th, the other is August 30. So is that simply a delay by the service provider providing names to us?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And I spoke with the SUNY Oswego, and they've all done everything that they need to do with compliance with making sure that they're. Yeah, so the college had a long conversation with SUNY Oswego, and they are all compliant with everything that they had to do to be around students.
All right. Any other questions on D? All those in favor? Thank you. Carried unanimously. Moving on to the consent agenda, I will make a motion to accept item E in its entirety. Can I get a second? I'll second. Mr. Patch, any discussion on E? All those in favor? Thank you. Passes unanimously. And with that, move on to special presentations to the board. And Mr. Michael Smolik, principal at A.A. Cole Elementary.
Okay, I'm going to use the wireless mic today. I have a tendency to be a little bit of a pacer sometimes when I'm presenting. Plus, I want to be able to make sure I can see the screen as well as my notes on the podium. Before I get started, I do want to recognize the AA Cole staff in attendance tonight. If you would stand, be recognized. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. They're here to obviously support our school showcase, or our school spotlight. And tonight we're focusing on something called Teen Time at AA Cole. We're going to go into a little bit about what Teen Time is, what we need to make Teen Time successful, and why we chose this option. at AA Cole, as well as our sister schools in the other elementaries as well. They've got a similar model in place. So team time is a designated block of time where our educators get with the entire cohort group. So we use second grade, for example. It's going to be Miss Mercier, Mr. Nichols, Mrs. Snyder, as well as some professionals, reading specialists and TAs. And the cohort groups are teamed together, and it's really designed to be able to deliver remediation and enriching our literacy program at AA Cole. A flood model, you can see, is used at the primary levels, meaning we flood the classrooms with numerous providers. We try to get as many adults in there as possible and keep our student-to-adult ratio as low as possible. We also provide additional support at the intermediate level. Obviously, reading instruction continues to be a focus in our district. We're analyzing and adjusting our instruction as needed. The TEAM acronym, everybody knows it as Together Everybody Achieves More. It has dual meaning in this sense because, again, the teachers are working as an instructional team. Excuse me. So again, why team time? Provides targeted instruction to address deficiencies and or enrich. So we use a diagnostic prescriptive approach, meaning we administer a diagnostic assessment, in this case more often than not it's a QPS, and then we prescribe what's needed. So a kid who might have been reading on a level T in the past, and then you've got a kid that's reading on a level G, those kids might have similar skill deficiencies, excuse me, so we would group them together during this team time. It maximizes the use of resources and ultimately leads to increased student achievement. We took a look at data across the district. Fourth grade data, let's say. So you might have had a kid that was reading 48 words a minute. You might have had a kid that was reading 182 words a minute. Well, what we noticed was that there were gaps in their foundational literacy skills. So even those kids that were seemingly high achievers. So what we're doing is taking those gaps because as they get into the middle school years, high school years, presented with more complex texts, faced with multisyllabic words, etc., they're going to struggle to decode those passages. In terms of maximizing the use of resources, it brings the professionals together. We all have certain skill sets. Nobody is fantastic at everything across the board, so the goal here is to really bring a lot of heads together and deliver quality instruction for our students. So in terms of what is needed for success, I mentioned a QPS before. Again, it's a quick phonics screener. That's our primary diagnostic assessment. It really gives us a roadmap to systematically identify and address skill deficiencies in our students when it comes to reading. Other assessments such as DIBELS can measure things like oral reading fluency. How many words a minute can a student read or pull off the page? But it can't tell us whether, it can tell us whether or not that student has the ability to decode, i.e. pull written words from a page and make the correct corresponding sounds. However, they don't identify the why. So in years past, we might have had a kid that was stuck at a certain level with DIBELS. Fluency rate was not improving, and some of the past practices, we might have been way off. It might have been a foundational literacy deficiency where that student was falling down, and we weren't specifically addressing that. So a big mindset shift for the adults being the teachers, the parents, as well as the students, is that those kids that you might have been typically grouped with in the past, the reading groups might look a little bit different now because they're skill-based again. So whether you're a kid that's, like I said before, reading on a T or a G, when we're using the Fontes and Pinnell levels, if you've got those similar skill deficiencies, you're going to find that those kids are going to be grouped together with one of the professionals in the model. Trust in professionals is obviously paramount here. With trust comes effective communication. The teachers, my expectation is that they are meeting regularly. They all have common planning. When they say they have common planning, grade level has a common planning time. So all my second grade teachers would have planning at the same time, third grade, so on and so forth. We do our best to really free up either AIS providers or special educators so they can meet with them. And then my staff is phenomenal in terms of willing to come in before school, after school, and meet if need be, meet and plan. Flexibility from staff and students. With any change in scheduling, flexibility is obviously a key to success. And then a belief in collective teacher efficacy. And this term comes from Hattie's 2016 research, and it's been determined that collective teacher efficacy is the #1 thing that can impact student achievement. So it's everybody tugging at the same ropes, is everybody pulling for a common goal. We kicked off our PD on the 30th of September with a presentation on collective teacher efficacy. And we're really modeling everything that we're doing PD-wise and instructionally using this model. Any questions related to the team approach? I apologize.
No, you're emotional about this, and I love it. I love it, man. So, when I was elementary principal, the teachers had come to me at Woodland, and they had said, hey, we want to do something. This was 10 years ago. We want to do, it's called WIN. They called it What I Need. And I got to tell you, it was tremendous. So it was basically the same layout. The students actually moved to different rooms based on if they needed more enrichment or not. And it was also given the opportunity to see from a different teacher. They loved it. And so I think you're onto something great.
So here, and I'll speak from an autobiographical standpoint. My own daughter, she's in 5th grade. One of my daughters is in 5th grade. And she scored at a proficient rate on the state assessment. She typically presents herself as a fluent reader when it comes to DIBELS in terms of the expectation for oral reading fluency. But when they administered the QPS, they found some foundational deficiencies. So, over at Miller Hawk, or MAT at CSI, excuse me, they are able to hone in on those deficiencies. And I've been speaking with the teachers as well as the curriculum consultant over at Miller Hawk. Well, Mike, Michaela could benefit from a little additional help. Yeah, of course, as a parent, I'm going to want as much help for my daughter as possible, because while she presents herself right now as a fluent reader and proficient on the New York State assessment, like I said before, when we get into those those complex texts at the higher levels, she might not be able to decode those words. And obviously, that's going to impact comprehension down the road. So it's certainly a different approach than we've taken in years past. And again, similar models exist at the other schools, at Hastings, Miller Hawk, and Brewerton. I pride myself on the fact, I know Mrs. Slade is back there. Okay. Mrs. Slade was one of many who was instrumental in setting up the teams. We were able to provide a tremendous amount of support K-3. Okay, and again, we've got additional adults. Mrs. Richards pushes in with 5th grade and 4th grade, I believe. So we are able to provide that additional support as well at the intermediate levels. Because believe it or not, and again, I started to allude to it, but didn't get into great depth. When we look at the 4th grade data district-wide, again, those kids that present themselves as a proficient test taker in the New York State assessment, a fluent reader, we were still finding gaps. The top 4 readers in the district, in terms of oral reading fluency rate, still had some foundational gaps. 2 of those 4 had some foundational gap when we broke it down skill by skill. So it was an eye-opening thing for us. And again, those kids might have been, I don't want to say pushed through, but it allows us to set them up for success, long-term success at the secondary level.
Team time is new this year for Higginton?
Yes.
And does it happen every day, or?
It happens every day, barring any 2-hour delays. But obviously those are out of our control. But yes, team time, and it's dedicated time at given points in the day, obviously based on the grade level, because I want to take my providers and spread them out as much as possible. So it's not as if we drop everything and it's school-wide team time.
Right.
However, the grade level has a common team time, because again, we're pulling them all together. And really, what you're doing is you're taking the kids. Let's say the 3 of you are teaching 2nd grade for me. So you're taking the kids in Christie's class who have skill deficiency A. Those same kids in your class had skill deficiency A. The same kids in Mr. Colbufo's class had skill deficiency A. Grouping them together. So it's also not spreading our resources as thinly as we perhaps have in the past, because the teacher within the four walls of the classroom had been responsible for all of those various levels, all of those skill deficiencies.
So you said something similar, for instance, at Hastings. We can ask
Mr. Wings?
but yeah, so how was yours different and why? And maybe you don't know, because I understand, like, sometimes you're just trying it and see how it runs this year, but how do you measure whether your quote model delivers better results than someone else?
Well, the models are all similar. So this is, you know, and Mrs. Phillips is not into micromanaging these models at all. She's allowing us as principals to sit down with our staff and trusting us as professionals to set it up as we see fit. Some of it comes down to resources, the most valuable of which in this model is the human resource aspect. And then what are the academic needs? So, you know, if Mrs. Wallace is needed in an ICT setting in 2 or 3 grade, well, 2 grade levels, she's currently 2 grade levels, that takes a chunk of her daily schedule. If I perhaps only needed her in 1 grade level, then I could use her during somebody's team time for that other hour or 2 hours during the day. So again, we all have similar models, but we've gotten sort of creative with our personnel. We want to try to be as creative as possible. And again, taking a look at things even like AIS services. So when we're providing pull-out AIS services, are we keeping those lists up to date and appropriately exiting kids? Because if we're appropriately exiting those kids, that's potentially freeing up more providers and might be able to push into a classroom or into a team time with a particular grade level.
The interesting thing, so when I was part of running this in a different district, we would give a very brief assessment. We would then be able to see, and it was again based on a standard, so the very amazing thing was you could have a student that was a high flyer in one standard, but very weak in a different standard. So students didn't look around going, oh, we're in the lower level group. It was fluid based on like 5 weeks and how they did on a specific targeted area, which was key.
And I'm very deliberate with my word choice. We progress monitor for DIBELS for certain level kids, but I want to be able to monitor progress. You talked about assessment. How are you tracking the success? We are working on various universal assessments. Okay, if the kids are working on skill A, there's going to be an assessment that's going to determine their success on skill A. Now, furthermore, we also talk, as you build up to the more complex skills, we talked about making sure that we cycle back and revisit those, because we want mastery. We care just as much, if not more, about retention of those skills. So, you know, if you administer an assessment after, you know, working with the Silent E for 6 weeks, did the kid nail the assessment because they've been just hammered for the past 6 weeks with Silent E work, or did they actually retain the skill? So, you know, as they progress through that would be a skill that we revisit in some of those assessments. Mrs. Wallace, actually, during a recent round of grade level meetings, came up with some great suggestions of how you can tie the skills together with various assessments. We did have the opportunity as well, and this came out of a PD the administrators attended over the summer. Lynn Court had presented up at City BOCES. A lot of times we're constrained by time. We had the opportunity over the course of the past 2 weeks to get some release time for our teachers and really have in-depth 2-hour data meetings during the school day where we provided the teachers with coverage. But it allowed us, far too often, you might schedule a data meeting and you just get into the meat of things and it's like, oh, kids are getting off the bus, time to go. And so we've sort of restructured, especially around benchmark time, because we benchmark all the kids in September, January, and June. And that's when we'll have these extended data meetings, in addition to the data meetings we have on a regular basis in the mornings.
And the interesting thing is that the board knows one of the instructional goals, goal number 1, instructional engagement, is going to be looking, so at the elementary level, it's not only the ELA and the math scores, 3 through 5, but the bigger thing that means even more than that to me is the QPS and the DIBELS charting throughout the year to see is the Reading League and the Oswego County Literacy Initiative really turning the dial to really see where it's going. Anecdotally, I've heard from teachers saying, oh my God, absolutely. They're already seeing things in their guided reading times that show significant increase from the strategies that they have picked up during that training. So it's going to be exciting to see where it goes.
Absolutely, without a doubt. And, obviously, we're in year 2 of the initiative, and, to cycle these kids through. Not only that, but again, we're kids who were previously determined to be fluent readers at the intermediate level. We're focusing on strengthening their skills before they exit our doors at AA Cole. But really, in order for the initiative to take hold, for us to see long-term success, obviously we want to see incremental success year to year, but that long-term success, obviously, as the kids cycle through, hopefully we'll continue to see more and more growth and stronger readers. Any other questions?
Correct me if I'm wrong, or off base, maybe I'm wrong, but you've got the 3 feeders that are coming in to feed all the way up to high school. You've got a plan for your school. How does your plan, I know you said they're similar, how does your plan compare to the other schools? And are they different enough to show a different result at the end of a student's tenure at your school? And if so, how do the 3 schools compare? And what can we pull out of all 3 of them to make a program that's more cohesive to provide a better product in the end? Or is that impossible? I know there's a lot there. That's
Right, and when I mentioned that they are similar, obviously, Larry, Brent, Amanda, and myself are in constant communication with one another. Aaron meets regularly with us, no less than once a month, and we review the progress. We compare data school to school, but understanding that there are different demographics. We're not so much looking at achievement levels, we're looking at growth levels with standardized measures. That standardized measure in September, January, and June is DIBELS, which is oral reading fluency at the intermediate levels. And you would like to think that if the kids get all of these foundational skills, that you would see an increase in oral reading fluency. So we're going to be tracking within our school. I mean, even grade level to grade level, class to class, there are differences at AA Cole with how the model is being implemented because the needs vary so much. So I can't speak for Larry, Brent, and Amanda, but I do know that we all have the flood model, in particular at the primary level, because research shows that putting your eggs in that primary basket, not that we want to discount, especially being a father of a 4th and 5th grader, not that we want to discount the intermediate levels, but we really want that early intervention piece. So we're putting more of our resources and allocating more resources to the primary levels. What that looks like, because the needs vary again building to building, I can't necessarily speak for them, but we're hopefully all pulling for that same result of increased student achievement.
And if I could just jump in, so one thing I just want to kind of think about, and I know what you're saying, and I agree. Where there is consistency are all those benchmark assessments that they're all taking. That's universal in 4 elementaries and 5 if you want to count CSI. But that's still universal. But what we're able to do is we don't compare school to school. We compare where the school was from where that cohort was last year. We're not comparing a school, let's say, in 4th grade, let's say in Brewerton, is at 95%, where in another building it can be at 35%. So it really does us no good to just look at that, although we always do. We look to say, is there something that the teachers are doing in that one building that shows growth in that certain area on a state test score, or on the QPS, or on DIBELS? Like, why is 3rd grade reading on this one? But then the biggest thing is to look at AA Cole, that cohort from when they were in 3rd grade, then the level, not only of retention, what he said, but how many students are actually showing growth amongst themselves, and then to look back. But to Mike's point, like in CSI, and I'm sure it's not, if Erin didn't have an emergency, she would say the same thing. You go by the strengths of the teachers. So I know at CSI, you have one of the 4th grade teachers that just does math. You have another one that does ELA. Another one that also comes in and does content, and they use each other to reinforce, and they're playing upon, it's kind of like a strength-based model. Other schools don't specifically do that. They feel more comfortable, each of them teach it, their math and their ELA. But what we are able to see is, that's a great question you bring up. We're able to see which building had the greatest growth based on their own cohort from the year before, to say, what's the secret sauce here that you were able to do? And then that's when Aaron then meets with the principals and say, oh my God, let's pull up this data right here. Let's look at what was going on at AA Cole, and this team model obviously showed great growth. So let's look at implementing that in the other buildings.
And and also making sure that we're monitoring our curriculum. You know, there was one particular skill, I won't go and say what it was, because we look at QPS data district-wide and say, okay, man, they're really killing it with this skill over in Brewerton. What are they doing that maybe we aren't sharing our best practices? But there's one skill in particular that we noticed across, my school psychologist refers to it as a stone cold killer across the district. There's one skill where our intermediate students were really being tripped up on. So that caused us to go back and look at the curriculum and say, where does that skill first appear? Where is it introduced? And where is it worked on? Where is it mastered? Well, it's introduced in Unit 10, Lesson 7. Good, I'm getting head nods. Unit 10, Lesson 7 of kindergarten. So then that got us to thinking, okay, is that something that, are the kindergarten teachers making it that far into the skills curriculum and introducing that? And if they're not, the first grade teachers need to know that because those kids aren't coming in with a foundational skill set.
Yeah, that was a topic of conversation at our last.
The Unit 10, Lesson 7?
Oh, yeah, the exact same thing.
I don't
But what I'm saying is if there's a solution that seems to be working in one school district, and maybe, school rather, and not to say that there's not crosstalk,
Right.
but I keep hearing this program for here, this program for here, this program for here. I think at some point, there's gotta be a melding of the minds, because all these kids are going to the same middle school. And the teachers at the middle school have gotta be given at least a fundamental basis to know that these all receive, and maybe they are, all receive all of this stuff that's in the soup is gonna show up. And my only question was, is that there's 3 or 4 or 5 different programs going on, how are we assuring that they're getting the same soup at the intermediate level?
I wouldn't say 3, 4, or 5 different programs. I mean, by name, yes, they might be different programs, but on premise and intent, they all have that same intent of targeting skill deficiencies. Keziah Rizzo, who's our new curriculum consultant up at AA Cole, she also meets regularly with the other consultants to also make sure not only the professional development that we deliver is consistent, but also to make sure that what we're delivering in the areas of focus instructionally are consistent. Because you're absolutely right, they're channeling into one middle school, coming out of one high school, and we want to make sure that they have at least a similar skill set. Understanding, obviously, and I know everybody does, that kids come at us with all different baseline data when they walk through our doors, whether it's in kindergarten, pre-K, or if they move into the district. We also want to make sure, too, because we have a transient population, somewhat transient population at AA Cole, so we want to make sure that if we have an in-district transfer, either out or in, goes to one of our sister schools, that kid is used to this particular model. So yes, we strive to make it as similar as possible. And again, with the ultimate end goal of student success.
Yeah, because I think for me, it's like the key word, I think that tonight, I've been sitting here now a couple of years, but it's the individual growth that we're after, right? So it's not really the
Achievement, it's more of that growth piece.
yes, it's the growth. So it's the individual growth that it's not the class growth, grade growth, school growth. It's the individual growth that you're looking for out of each student. So it really shouldn't matter where you're at.
Absolutely.
That's what that to me is like
I'm
an aha
gonna-
moment right now today of all this stuff is that it's important.
Right, now steal a line I hear many times from the gentleman in the center is it's not where you start, it's where you end up. And obviously we want all of our kids to end up in a successful setting. Kathy, did you have a question?
I did, so if I'm understanding this right, this is an approach to literacy skills, which is great. What, if anything, we've done in other subject areas, particularly math, or put kids in groups based on where they have strengths or deficiencies?
Well, and I'm glad you actually brought up math because we've been working with Suzanne Fox, who's the math subject area specialist coming out of City BOCES, the professional development specialist coming out of BOCES. So, not to get off on too much of a tangent, but our math instruction, we're kind of analyzing our approach to it because we've got a lot of teachers, and I can speak for AA Cole, we've got a lot of teachers doing a lot of great things. But understanding scope and sequence first and foremost, and what's being taught in the grade below me, what's the expectation for the grade above me, and then taking best practices, which is really what Suzanne and I focused on. We did visitations for 3 days near the end of September, really focusing on best practices within the math classroom, whether it's, you know, if you're going to set up and have center-based instruction so you can enrich, you know, kids that have the concept, and then you can also support the kids that might need a little bit of additional support. That's in play in some of the classrooms at AA Cole. We obviously have to make sure, because math is a scalable in nature, we have to make sure they have a solid understanding of you know, what's expected of them at their particular grade level, but we are coming up with different ways to enrich, in particular in math. I'm a big believer, you know, we never want to handcuff your high-achieving students, and you want to make sure that you're supporting your low-achieving students, and certainly not forgetting about those kids in the middle. It is a balancing act, no doubt, but I know, like I said, Suzanne Fox has been working with us to sort of share best practices and make sure that we've got a solid approach.
And if Erin was here, she would jump in, because that is a good question. We talked about that. We talked about that. We know that reading was a major emphasis in our district and a priority for many years, because we saw that we had struggling readers, but we had kids struggling in math as well. So we were looking at this approach, and I know she was here, she would jump right in, that this is a model that we're seeing works with ELA. We now want to be able to figure out how then can we also incorporate that with math, because we have the same students that are high flyers that could benefit from going to another teacher at the same level. The problem with that, quite honestly, I don't want to mention any teachers here, but in my last district, that math wasn't the skill set, the special area of focus for many of them, but reading was. So that's an area that they went created positions like a math AIS person that came in, because the teachers were honest and said, look, we've got a pretty good handle on literacy, but we're not math specialists. And everybody knows at the elementary level, they're tasked with knowing every single subject. So I say that all the time to secondary people, that whenever this comes up, at the elementary level, you're tasked with being an expert in all of the subject areas. So this is something that Erin and I have talked about, that we're looking at how this model is working, moving kids in different rooms to see how that actually benefits them, to then be able to say, we have the data, now let's also implement that from that. But it is a good question.
You mentioned science and social studies as well. We have a block of time dedicated to content at each grade level, where science and social studies. I know my fourth grade team 2 years ago, they taught it. They were subject specific. So I had one fourth grade teacher who taught writing during that block, one who taught social studies during that block, one who taught science during that block. Actually, it was the teachers who rotated, not the students, but the teachers rotated. So I knew that Mrs. Wentworth was my science teacher. Gosh, fourth grade here. So actually, it was several years ago that we did that. But you can get departmentalized. You mentioned science, huge hook for so many kids too. So we don't want to, and we aren't back burner in any of the content areas. Okay, sorry. We aren't, and we don't want to back burner any of the subject areas, because we know that kids have different hooks. You know, science could be something that brings kids to school. Math could be something that brings kids to school. So, other questions?
The only question I have is a couple weeks ago when Eric was presenting about some of the primary level, particularly the skills, the Hastings had a program that CKLA, and now that's trying to be incorporated in this kind of Red Hawk module kind of program they're trying to create for the primary levels. Are there still a lot of differences? Like, for instance, have you at Cole incorporated the CKLA? It wasn't primary.
K2.
K2.
Yes.
They were also using it up to 5th grade.
Hastings was piloting it up 3 through 5 as well. Yes.
Yeah, and they were seeing benefits from that. So I guess my question is, you know, if we're doing this team time at AA Cole and wind time at Hastings, and then they have this other difference, once you have so many variables in the pot, then you don't really know what's working. So I guess I'm trying to understand, are we trying to streamline some of that?
So I want to say this, because I know this keeps coming up, and so I want to be very clear with this. So this year is the final year of building the curriculum mapping, so that next year, the curriculum mapping, the actual curriculum across all of our elementary, will all have components of CKLA, the best of the module pieces that if you ask teachers, they'll say, I love that module, it turns the dial for my kid. And then it's also going to be other great things that teachers have used and shown success on that. So Aaron has been meeting with that committee. That's 100% going to be incorporated for next year, consistent across the whole district, because as we said before, the modules are not a script, but if we didn't stay with the talk, the task, the text, then there wasn't consistency. So then to Mike's point, we wouldn't know when those kids get to the middle school if they had all of the skill sets that they needed, because if we left it to the teacher, they would maybe pick the things that that teacher felt was most important, and that it wouldn't actually hit. We've been doing this since I first arrived and I oversaw the elementary, and we did power standards. And we said, okay, we met as a superintendent conference day, full day, and I had all of second grade together in a big massive room. I had all third grade together and whatnot, kindergarten straight up. And we had these conversations and saying, okay, these are the standards for ELA that are just non-negotiable, that the kids will really struggle if they don't have them and they move down. We have great dialogue with that, and Aaron took that to the next level. But I'm really excited to see what the curriculum now is going to look like that will have CKLA embedded throughout. So it won't be like Hastings is doing all CKLA, because there's no doubt my kids do CKLA. I definitely see the benefits of CKLA. But again, it goes back to when this whole thing came out, this district years ago, probably what, 8 at this point? And I'd have to go back to look when this whole thing came out with the state. This district went all in on the modules. I worked in the district that didn't touch the modules, and they built their own curriculum. So we are at that stage right now, building it. Next year, we're going to be ready to roll.
It's going to take the best of everything,
Okay.
best components of everything, and put it together.
And so, my understanding is that is a collaborative effort. There's like 2 teachers from each grade level.
Curriculum mapping?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, but they are soliciting feedback from the rest of the there's 2 representatives on the committee from each grade level is what I understand, but they're also soliciting feedback from the rest of the staff at that level.
There is certainly dialogue, yes, that takes place, water cooler talk, if you would. There is dialogue that takes place, and there is, it's also important to point out that there's representation from all the schools. We try to balance the school representation as best we could. This way, no one school is saying, well, so that school's getting all the say with where we're headed, and we're not getting any of the say. Having sat in on those meetings, they are very productive, great discussion in terms of where we're headed. It's an exciting prospect. So.
It is interesting though. I mean, some teachers have their personal preference that don't like CKLA, that they like the modules, and they give good reasons for that. And then some teachers are really big on CKLA because it really kind of extends the learning in a different way and more background knowledge, that they like that. So it is definitely important to get, you're never going to get 100% consensus on this, but with that being said, I think Erin's done a really good job. I do want to say Erin had a major emergency she had to go home to, she didn't just leave. But if she was here, she would jump in and say that as well. I am excited to see that curriculum next year, so that, to Mike's point, that we can actually say, when the kids go to the middle school, we feel 100% confident that they're all getting the same amount. When I was younger, I did have an elementary teacher. She was awesome. She's passed away down in specialty, probably in heaven. But we did long houses for 6 weeks that my mom made. She did an awesome job building it. Long house, yeah. She loved apples too, and we did that for a long time as well. But we don't. Our teachers are phenomenal. It's not that they're lacking. It's just the consistency among all of the different buildings and the grade levels. I think that we're going to be able to have that.
We've really shored up consistency within the grade levels, within the schools, and then across the district. Tremendous amount over the course of the past, 6 years, 7 years. It's evolved.
Yeah, because to me, that's the big challenge, right? You got your elementary schools, and to get them all on the same music. That's a big deal. That's not, you just don't have one elementary school in this district. It's feeding one, so. And then you take it, and then you got the largest land area in New York State, right? So it's a big difference between Constantia and Beaverton. I mean, you're across county.
Well, and it's not only that, we're just scratching the surface, Steve. So, and how TAs were given was honestly very different for many, many, many years in this district, depending on the site that was in the building or the head of special ed at the time. We're making some consistencies now across the board in doing that we're maximizing our resources and we're providing the best for for students. But I can say it has been different by building, and we're getting rid of that.
And
Yeah,
certainly,
then to me, I'm sorry, then the challenge comes, right? So you got consistency, but then you have this group back here that we don't want to, handcuff any of those folks back there
Right.
to do what they want to get done and do. And so it becomes a standardized thing as far as into the middle school, measuring it all the way and not understanding what you're thinking. And I'm just saying with, throughout my experience, my career, that this is hard to do. This is not easy.
Well, I just want to, let me just piggyback on that real quick. I just had a conversation with Lynn Dowler today. The typical Central Square student is vastly different than the average Central Square student even from 10 years ago. So with what we're seeing, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We had 5 fifth grade kids that were CPAP for wanting to kill themselves within 6 weeks last year. So that's why we put so much social emotional. We're adding counselors. We're adding, somebody like Joe Moscow. It's like a saint what she's able to do, and we're adding more to that because it's not just here. I talk to the other superintendents once a month at Chiefs meetings. They're all seeing the same problems. We're seeing families moving away from this district that didn't seem to have any issues, and kids were great, had no issues behaviorally, whatnot. But we're seeing such a rise of parents coming in that struggle. I see Dr. Collins nodding her head because she's having these meetings with these parents that they're really struggling at home. And yet they're bringing these kids in with so many issues before our teachers that are sitting right there can even teach them academics. They're dealing with major, trust me, I'm kind of an elementary principal right now. I'm seeing how many times I had a boy today that was hiding in a cabinet that I was running through the woods thinking he got out of the building. So these are things that we deal with every day that we're expecting our teachers. And we talk about morale in places, and I said this to Lynn Dowler, I want people to understand it's not a Central Square issue. It's being a teacher in New York State with all the regulations and everything that's come down and all of these lists and all these things. And ESSA, you're on this list, you're on that list, you're on a disproportionate list based on your minority population and how many you're receiving services. Things that are just beyond our control. And yet we're still asking them to do a bang-up job to get growth from all of our kids. So that's where next time I see the governor, I'm going to say it again.
and it's not about a one-size-fits-all philosophy, but it's putting systems and structures in place to ensure the greatest amount of consistency as we feed into that middle school. Other questions? I know we kind of got off the tangent from the team time. I appreciate everybody's help. I do want to, once again, thank the AA Cole staff members who were able to make it tonight. I know that some of them have young families. The others are chomping at the bit to go home and grade papers and lesson plans. So certainly you're welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting, but if you must leave, feel free. Have a great night. Thank you.
Just a heads up for next week though, we'll be really interested to hear from you and all of you in the audience how the new team time worked out, what you saw and stuff. So
Right, and that's what, it's always the trick when you're one of the first school spotlights. I can't talk about the highlights of the school year. It's tougher, but I want to introduce something that we've changed for the better. At least I believe so. And certainly, Aaron can report out on behalf of all of the elementary schools, or I'm more than willing to come back and let you know where we were and then where we end up, where we finish.
thank you.
Growth.
Thanks, Mike.
No problem.
All right, moving into reports, unfinished business. Tom, I know you're just back. A little time off. Just so that we don't bring it up every time, when should we put kind of the flag in the ground? When do you want to give an update on what our student board director?
So before I was gone, I called Deb O'Mara because I loved the idea that Logan came up with regarding Big Brother and Big Sister for the high school kids. And she said that it actually does exist in Onondaga County. And they will provide a mentor for a student that we give them. So I said to Deb, well, clearly it's a student issue. And I want to be able to figure out what's the best way of putting it out there. Unfortunately, because I've been very actively involved with Big Brother and Big Sister, going to the banquets every year and whatnot, and talking to the littles. And the little students will say they love it. The hardest part is having a high school student recognize that they need something like this to be able to then to go and do that. But that's something that I want to have further conversation with Connie and basically say, you know, we have kids, they're repeat offenders. There are districts right now that I just come back from the NISCUS conference that are basically saying, okay, you know, you got suspended for your second time vaping. Something that actually you had sent me too from another district, and it was like they made them take a course on the negative aspects of vaping and whatnot. When they finish that course, they get their suspension drastically reduced. Well, I'd like to also look at that for students that clearly are lacking that parent role model, those things, just something's not there for them, and they need a mentor. So could that also be part of their at-risk kind of, you know, plan that we put them on, is to say, okay, here's the situation, as a repeat offender, you're going to be out this many days unless you do meet with this person and they allow us to talk to the person to see how it's going. So I've kind of started the ball rolling with Deb O'Mara, and we're going to try to identify how many of these students, first off, would be interested, because I still think there are some that would just volunteer and say yes, and she agreed. So just to give you that quick update, we are working on it. I did reach out to Deb, and I think it's an excellent idea.
Thank you. All right, let's open it up to the board. Any topics or concerns, comments to bring up? Mike? All right, couple reminders. Just a couple reminders. So the convention's coming up in a couple weeks. If you haven't yet, there's a convention app, whatever you are, Android or iPhone or whatever. If you just look for NISBA. There's a convention app. And it's really good. It lets you see all the sessions. You can put together your schedule if you want, see what's available. So that's very helpful. Pearl alerted me to, apparently there's a New York State requires, in addition to our other training that we have taken, child abuse training, reporting. But the problem is that NISBA and all the other sources are saying, like for instance, when Mrs. Sundit went for her training, it's all the training a new board member needs. Oops, except for that. Well, exactly, which isn't. Yeah, which isn't, there's more that's required. So bottom line is, I'll work with Pearl. Apparently it's a new thing that started this October with additional requirements.
Reporting. So what I'd like to do, if they're saying, well, your thing wasn't good enough, if we can do like we did with all the staff with Right to Know, that they clicked like 10 slides, it took 15 minutes to do, they answer a couple questions and that was it. One of the modules they didn't even have to answer any questions, they just go through that. So I'm wondering if we can look at that and see if we can then just make something for each board member to then have.
We could incorporate that when we have our board retreat, if we ever get that scheduled. Mr. President?
The president doesn't set the schedule. Listen, if we can get people together, I'd be happy to. If you want to suggest a date, for it, the problem has been getting any availability of people. I really don't see a way that we're going to do it other than on a board meeting night, just based on knowing people's schedules. So if you want to come to the next one with a suggested date and/or content, we'll be happy to schedule it up. So the city event, there's a couple events. Number one, the city tour is scheduled for October 23rd in the morning. I think Pearl sent an email out to everyone. And it's just important, I think we have confirmed because the city is coordinating some sort of transportation, right? Because we're visiting some satellite locations. The PTEC/lobbying night, where we actually are going to have our representatives there, is November 7th. Turnout from Central Square is very good. Pearl, I don't know if you know what our 8, all right, which is great. And that is it for me, so if there's nothing else, turn it over to the superintendent's report.
Really positive note, if you haven't heard, our girls soccer is now ranked 7th in the state, best it's ever been ranked. And their only loss was to Janesville DeWitt, who hadn't lost in, I believe, 2 or 3 years. But their loss was to us, to the girls' team. They're doing phenomenal. And the Jim Dranzak believes that in sectional play, it could be the first time ever in history that they could be ranked #1 in the state going into that. So they're phenomenal. Coach, super excited. The team is fantastic. I do want to give a shout out. I wasn't at the last meeting. Tim Hahn, who's sitting right there in the red. Tim is our new land tech. That's the local area technician. Very happy to have you joining our program and our department. Thank you. The track team. So there was a situation. It was brought to my attention as I had just left the airport, and that basically, what did I say, track? Sorry, cross country. There's a difference. Cross country. They had everything set for their Albany trip tomorrow, Friday, but then something happened with the coach, not the coach meaning the person who runs the team, but the transportation, the company that they were getting the coach from, that basically kind of dropped the ball. And they were no longer able to drive the students. So Andy had first called me on that to make me aware. We did some troubleshooting. That coach company wasn't able to adhere to our 2-day policy, so we basically waived that and said, come with your driver's abstract as well as the DMV certifications, whatever F530 form, whatever that was for each of the buses. If you come in hand with that, then John Pierce would do the inspection. They got there, checked the certifications and everything, and go on their way. The problem with that was that I was then told that they couldn't guarantee that they could even have a driver ready to go at 5 o'clock. So now we're going to be going through, we were able to get them one bus. That's what they said that they could survive with one bus and one driver. The reason why we couldn't give them more drivers and buses, it's Friday. Band has already had a scheduled trip, 3 buses and drivers going to New Hartford, and Fridays are very difficult with sports and away contests. We just didn't have any more buses to be able to give them to. I don't have the paperwork yet. I haven't received that yet from the coach of the team, but I talked to John Pierce, and he said that she's going to be getting you that information. She knows she has to get you that. I'm sorry I don't have anything to put in front of you guys right now. It's just kind of all unfolded today that the coach company kind of dropped the ball. So,
Yes, so Tom and I were talking a little bit before the meeting. We as a board, not in theory, we should be approving changes. So what I'm going to suggest is that we make a motion in a second to approve changes to the trip, everything else stays the same, right? I mean, nothing changed as far as the number of chaperones per student, where they're going, it's just the mode of transportation. And then,
Where they're going to. They were gonna miss school tomorrow, so they had a stop at the Utica Zoo and at Senator Ritchie's office that won't occur if they're not going until February.
well, but here's the thing that I'm still waiting to see. John Pierce thinks that they're able, since it's only one bus, to send them earlier. So I wasn't being rude. I was texting a little bit earlier because I said, can you get back to me as soon as possible since I have the board all right here? But he didn't have that information yet, waiting to hear from the driver. He feels really confident that they'll be able to send them out at the normal time that they were going to go out so they wouldn't miss the zoo and all those other events.
so would everyone be comfortable with simply, we'll make a motion to allow changes to the previously approved trip. Tom will circle back with us and let us know what the changes were, but we know kind of in scale, it's not going to be a difference financially to us other than the cost of our driver going, which is a normal field trip expense, and maybe a slight change to the itinerary, but nothing major. Is everyone good with that? All right.
I want everyone to know I'm not guaranteeing that they could leave earlier. But if he was able to do that, I just don't have that yet. I don't want him to leave here and think that they're still gonna be able to do the zoo and whatnot. And we feel terrible about that. I did ask what the name of the company is, but I also found out that the company had been nothing but successful in the past. This is the first time that they ever did something like that. But again, with such short notice, it puts us in a tough spot because I know they had great things planned, like the zoo and other events.
So just to make it official, I make a motion that the board authorizes Tom to allow changes to the previously approved cross-country trip and simply provide the paperwork once it's finalized back to the board via email. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Loy. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Anything else in your report?
No, I'm good.
All right. Thank you. With that, we'll move into item H, items for discussion and action. Can I get a motion for H1, the approval of the first reading of proposed district policies? Mrs. Wood with the motion, second by, sorry, who was it? Mrs. Sutton down at the end. Yeah, my only commentary is this: next year, I'm telling you, so when it comes to the NISBA convention, I'm submitting something for resolution next year for NISBA, because in this policy, and again, it's state ed law, but the stupidity of some of our laws, rules, which is we have a policy that we have to follow that allows the teacher in our district to take up to 3 years leave to go teach in a charter school. There's no reciprocity to that. Someone teaching in a charter school, they don't have to give them time if they, for some reason, want to teach in a public school. It just points to the great situation New York puts us in. So can't do anything about policy. It is what it is, but that's my commentary. Any other discussion on that?
Again, going back to what I said about our state.
All those in favor of H1? Thank you. And I'll make a motion to accept item H2, which is the approval of the resolution for the Assistant Director of Pupil Personnel Services, changing it from a 10-month to a 12-month position. Can I get a second before discussion? Second by Mrs. Fishman, and we'll open up for discussion. I know Tom sent kind of a recap or some explanation in an email today, but I also know we're all working jobs during the day, so if we need to discuss now, that's fine. So does anyone need to discuss now?
So I'd either like to discuss it, or there's not a compelling reason that it needs to be voted on tonight, to be able to read and digest what was sent this afternoon. A lot of information.
Well, I would say the desire absolutely is to get it rolling and have confidence in me and the fact that if it had to change from 10 to 20, I just want to be able to let me 10 months plus 20 days to 12 months. The reason why that changed, let me explain why that and what I have put in writing. And then if you have any other questions or believe that that's needed, then obviously that's your right. So first, when it started, back when we talked about it before, when it was going to be a district-wide psych position, it was going to be just like what all of the psychs have, and they all have 10 months plus 20 days, which the only difference between 10 months plus 20 days and a 12-month employee is they have to do, the 10-month plus 20 days have the same, they have the teacher calendar. So this year we have 2 weeks off, teachers have 2 weeks off at Christmas. They have the week off in February, week off in April, any of the other vacation days that admin don't have off. So one of the big pressing things that we're dealing with that I put in, that I have no problem mentioning right now, is the special education department. So we're right now have peeled back the onion on a department that I have said for the longest time we needed to really change. And so again, I don't want to mention personnel of people that are no longer in the district, but the bottom line is we had one person overseeing the entire special education department that in other districts, even smaller than us, had an assistant director that was working 12 months. What we're dealing with right now is something I put in an email to you guys today. I'm sorry it was so late, but we have hired a company called Capture A. And we have found out that many of the procedures were lacking. in our special education department, resulting in possibly hundreds of thousands of dollars that was left on the table yearly. And so this has now changed our entire procedures, because this company, Capture Aid, not only goes back and finds $500,000 to $600,000 extra that was left on the table, is what they do for districts, and it's looking like that for us. But it also talks about procedures that they're definitely recommending immediately change. So, for instance, when you're talking about summer school busing, that's part of the high cost, and you can generate up to like $60,000 for us. We have other situations in the special education department that, quite honestly, now that I was able to see this, is far more staff is needed than just one executive director, who's phenomenal, and what she has done since she's arrived here has been amazing, and uncovering things that just have not been in compliance. So with all that information, coupled with the fact that the only real reason why we went with the 10-month plus 20 days, after the fact that we changed it from the district-wide site to an assistant position, was because we felt that it was going to be more appealing for teachers that have a special ed background, that it was going to be their entry-level job. So people on the committee looked at the people that were interviewed, and they said, I thought maybe they would have more administrative experience. That's like asking somebody applying for an assistant principal job, why didn't they have more experience in administration before they went for it? That's an entry-level job. That was a unicorn right there that we were able to get, and the fact that for an assistant, with somebody with 14 years running a district of 8,000 people, it's very rare to be able to get something like that. So to answer your question in a nutshell, I don't want to push this off, and the fact that to have somebody on not the teacher calendar, but the admin calendar, to not only support everything that our new executive director is trying to right the ship on, but I've also been tasked by the board by January 1st to identify the programs that are going to be operating and save the district a lot of money, but a massive value-added benefit to all of those special education students that are in autistic programs and other programs that we're paying top dollar for across our entire county. That's a huge thing. So those are all the things that she's doing right now. And on top of that, she's the CPSE chair and the CSE chair. So what I don't want is to burn her out. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm passionate about or out of line in this. I'm just, in the past 2 weeks, I realized just how not compliant we were running things with our special education department, and how much hundreds of thousands of dollars that I'm able to recoup from last year, but I'm not able to recoup from previous years. And I know that she's probably working 15-hour days to right the ship, and to have somebody that's not going to be like, well, it's Christmas, I'm out for 2 weeks. And then if that was the only incentive to be able to get teachers to come in to try to go for this job, then I would say we're stuck, we have to do it. We contacted the 2 other finalists back when it was 10 months, 20 days, and they said that they already accepted admin positions within special ed within their own district. So the people that have interviewed for that very much were 100% okay with it being a 12-month position, and the fact that they understand how much work needs to be done, and more importantly, by all means, go ahead and add to that. You gotta just hit the microphone button.
I just want to add that I just want everyone to know that I've visited all of the special education teachers throughout the district, and our psychologists and our support staff people, and our boots on the ground in this district are amazing, and they're doing wonderful things for our children. It's our process and our procedure at the district office level that is quite frankly broken, and we're out of compliance on some big things that we need to fix. So I need a team member with me in order to be able to communicate and roll out the new process and compliance process effectively to the entire staff, so that people feel supported and positive, and there's good energy coming to the children while we do this, because they've been working so hard for so long on their own without good direction from my office. It's critical that we have someone with us.
And in full transparency, because it's not an executive session, I'm not going to mention any names. She's also operating right now with no clerical except a brand-new person that you just approved tonight, Peggy, Ambrian? Denver. So the reason for that was the two clerical that were there, one of them is going to be no longer with us on the 17th of this month. And that the other one, who was new, prior to her even coming in, put a transfer to work at Paul Moore as clerical. So I wanted to be known out there that I fully recognize that the board holds me very much accountable on everything, as you should, but that we also hold everybody else accountable. So that is clerical, teachers, principals, assistant principals, and we're very clear with those expectations. We have some people still in the district that were used to kind of doing things a certain way, and that the accountability piece wasn't there. Well, we have the accountability piece there. We have an executive director of special ed that knows special ed inside and out, knows the billing of it, knows what's to do right by our students and to support our teachers, so, and our administrators. So with that being said, some people didn't like that accountability. And so not only are we hoping now to be able to get a solid right hand for her in that position as the assistant director, but we're also looking now to find a second clerical who, the clerical in a special education department is unlike really clerical anywhere else. They are the clerk. So when important information comes in regarding special ed to that clerk, the time starts going. One of the first things that she noticed when she came in was that we were not in compliance. We had at least 10 students not in compliance, meaning the time, there was a little time on IEP Direct, there was a little clock that shows it was 60 days and 120 days over. So we have really pulled back the onion, or the curtain on this, and we've really exposed, now that we have somebody that has the expertise to be able to look at this and how to address it. So again, just in conclusion, I would say, I've heard at least one board member sitting here today say they recognize, and they've said this for a year, the need for our special education department to improve. And we're doing that. And I feel that 10-month, 20-day, the fact that the need is there for the 12-month, it's justified.
So basically, Tom, what you're trying to say is you've got one person on this team, you want to put the second person on this team that's on the same schedule. She knows what that schedule is, everybody knows what the schedule is, they're all both going to be in lockstep with each other on a timing basis. And the 10-20 doesn't necessarily do that, the 12 does. Simple enough.
Yeah, from a board perspective, and I don't know, I'm assuming it's required that we approve this since it's on the agenda, but the reality is it's almost silly that we're required to, right? Because we gave Tom and administration a range of salary and approved the position, the head count before. The only thing that's changing is how they're utilizing the time. It still has to be within the salary range we gave and all the other parameters, so it's kind of a minor change and yet not minor, obviously, the benefits to it, so, yeah. So I don't know if that's enough for to move forward or not, but it sounds like we really do need to, Tom would like us to vote on tonight.
So to wrap it up, then, the urgency of tonight is because this is a vacant position, we need to advertise, we need to get it put out there the way it's going to end up.
We've advertised it, we've interviewed the position because it was already approved, and in doing that, it was asked that if it was a 12-month position, are you okay with that? And they're okay with that. So we're ready to get this person started. The person would have to give notice to their district, which I'm sure is going to be 30 days. And again, what I see over my head is the fact that I looked at all the board members and said, the first board meeting in January, we're going to be putting out what those programs are going to be at CSI. So to me, that's huge. The other big thing that just popped up are the hundreds of thousands of dollars that I want to make sure aren't left on the table, that we're able to recoup at least the $600,000 that was left on the table last year, and make sure that we provide her with the support that she needs to really be able to make these changes. So it's exactly what Mike Lawyer just said. We need somebody whose schedule is going to be lockstep with hers to be able to help get that done. And at the same time, too, with all of the other special ed needs, the big needs of the CPSE meetings and the normal CSE meetings that she's a part of.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about like, what, 30 days? Less than that? I mean,
We're only talking about 16 days.
Yeah, everything is the same, and this is just based on what's gonna be under contract, whether it's gonna be 10 months, 20 days, or 12 months, I mean, if that's what she needs, and that's what the administration has decided is best for the students in the district, then.
And then just add into that, really, it's not even that much of a difference, because the reality is when you go to a 12-month position, you then get vacation time. So we're moving from a 10 plus 20, which is an 11-month, to a 12-month minus 4 weeks vacation, which is an 11-month. But it makes a difference in the ability to match up schedules and have the administrative holidays, all that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah, so the issue isn't necessarily with what the request is. The issue is that because it was sent this afternoon, we didn't understand what the request was really, what it was and what was behind it.
Well, but.
So now that we have that information, then,
To be fair to Tom, though, it was, like, the question only came in today, right? I mean, so the agenda got put out Friday, so Tom, it's not, I don't want people to think Tom didn't respond. It was responded to as soon as the questions came in, so. But that being said, it sounds like we're at the end of the discussion, so we need to vote on it. So, item H2, all those in favor? And it is unanimous, appreciate that. And with that, you're at the end, so can I get a motion to adjourn?
Sure.
Mr. Lloyd, second by
I'll second.
Mr. Patch, any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you, see you